I'm Tamron Hall. We'll get to all of that in a minute, but first we are following another developing story. The Justice Department is saying now it will go ahead with its efforts to block Texas' new voter ID law. It was implemented after the Supreme Court back in June struck down a key provision of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. NBC News Justice correspondent Pete Williams joins us live now from Washington. Pete, this was anticipated. We knew it was coming, but it's making headlines today.
It certainly escalates the battle there, Tamron. So the centerpiece here is the Supreme Court's decision striking down the heart of the Voting Rights Act. Before the court ruled, Texas had to get pre-clearance for any changes in its election law, and a federal court said no both to Texas's changing its voter ID law and redrawing its district lines for congressional and legislative districts. After that, now the Justice Department is pursuing a new course. It has again sued Texas. It's saying, yeah, we admit we can't stop you under the old Voting Rights Act, but we're going to use a new section of the Voting Rights Act to claim that this voter ID law is unconstitutional. Attorney General Eric Holder, in a written statement, said today, we will not allow the Supreme Court's recent decision to be interpreted as open season for the states to pursue measures that suppress voting rights. So what the court is saying is, the Justice Department now is rather saying it's unconstitutional on its face, and it's also asking the court in Texas to use a new section of the Voting Rights Act to say Texas is still on purpose and by effect discriminating against minorities, language minorities, racial minorities in Texas, and under a different section of the Voting Rights Act, it still ought to have to get federal permission before it changes any election laws. So it's pursuing two tracks, going against the voter ID law and upping the ante now on the fight against redistricting.
Okay, and how does this factor in, Pete? With yesterday we were talking with a county commissioner, a judge, as well as the Dallas County District Attorney for a separate legal action that they are taking in response to Texas and this voter ID law that's so controversial.
Well, there's several lawsuits already pending. The Justice Department joined one over redistricting, and now it's asking to be a full-fledged party in that case so that it can present its own evidence and try to persuade a judge that what Texas did here doesn't merely have the effect of discriminating, but was intended to make it harder for minorities to vote. The interesting question, Tamron, is there's sort of a new theory that's emerging against people who are defending these laws. They're saying we're not trying to make it harder for minorities to vote. We're trying to make it harder for Democrats to vote. And by the way, we're allowed to do that, and the courts can't do anything about it. So we'll have to see how that plays out.
That's an interesting one there. Thank you very much, Pete. Greatly appreciate it. We're also